Tonight I have a very special guest. Bob Neveritt is here. He is also a host here on Achieve Radio. He hosts Cash Flow, which airs weekly, and you are in for quite a treat tonight, I have to say. Bob invited me onto his Radio Fest this past fall, last year, and we had quite a conversation. In fact, I believe it was supposed to be an hour spot, turned into a 2-hour spot, and we had a rather lively conversation. A lot of folks tuned in and heard us and thought the conversation was, I guess, interesting and entertaining, to say the least. So when I was talking to Bob about coming back on my show when I started new shows for 2014, I thought it would be a good idea to bring him over to my house for a little bit so we could continue the conversation. When I went on the air with him back in the fall, I had not heard of him before, but I have to say, since I have studied and seen what he's up to, and he's a very interesting man. He has a lot of interesting things. He's been on the radio for a very long time, to say the least, and I really don't know what to expect tonight, and I'm going to tell all of you to sit tight and have no expectations. I'm going to let Bob introduce himself, give him a chance to tell all of you who he is and where he comes from. And really, I have found the best way to interact with Bob myself seems to be spontaneous, in the moment, and we just go with the flow as it comes out. So we had connected this past fall, as I said. And he had talked to me about the Voynich manuscript, which some of you know that I've been researching and studying, and I went to Yale last November to take a look at the book. My article was just published in France on my trip to Yale, in fact, this month, and has been released. It is published in English on my blog, The Yin Factor, where you can all read it for yourselves. And so Bob had mentioned to me that he had something about the Voynich in the Evergreen files, and so we connected, and we had a very synchronistic conversation about that, because the week that I was on the show, he had actually started to have some interaction with the material, and so had I, and so it was interesting that it had come up in our 2-hour conversation. So tonight we're going to talk a little bit about that. We're going to talk about that as far as I know. The rest of it really is up in the air, and that's the way I like it. So, Bob, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. Welcome to my show, and let's start.
Well, thank you, Hillary. Welcome to Maui. You're in Maui. I'm in Maui. I'm in wherever you are, and we're in Bill's zone. Discarnate is the term, disembodied. That's what electric media, like the telephone, give us. So I'm the host of Not Cash Flow. That was James Martinez, which we were guests on every Wednesday for 3 years, 2009, 2011, a bit into 2012. Then I started my own show on Saturday night. Bill gave me unlimited time on Saturday night going into Sunday, since he said it wasn't really a popular night, Friday and Saturday. So I have gone as long as 20 hours on my Saturday night show with callers, and it's called Payday. I'm in ... I'm in charge, and that means whoever gets on the microphone or the phone and talks, they're in charge for the moments they are expressing themselves. So I try to make it participatory. I'm only there as the one who's responsible for showing up every week, but I'm not a dominant host. I don't really have guests. I just let whatever happens show up. And we do feature Ion, which is how I'm known on Achieve Radio. Ion is not an entity. It's a very strange process. I like to get grand and call it electricity squared, but it also says it is the environment of heaven, or it likes to use the term from Jewish literature, religious literature, the Gulf. So it's the environment of the Gulf where all entities go and hang out if they choose to transition or die. But Ion prefers the word transition. So here it is, the voice of the Gulf, the environment of the Gulf has been awakened by me, Carolyn, and JW, the human being who Ion communicates through and around, is here to speak and interact with people, and says that we woke it up. And the Gulf itself is not a creative environment. It's a place of bliss that all humans experience when they go there and remain in a weird bliss state. And it doesn't create. You can't create there. But when you come forth into the physical, you can create. So Ion is here creating for the first time. the non-physical is creating, which is sort of theologically the amazing transformation that we're going through today, which I kind of anticipated and talked about thanks to Marshall McLuhan and his insights for 30 years on the radio up in Toronto and other places. I have an incredible timeline of radio shows. I'm probably the most recorded talker on radio, that kind of medium, though radio per se is not the medium we're in anymore. But speaking, other than, say, a Rush Limbaugh or Howard Stern, who are recorded, I assume, by their corporations and everything is preserved. So I'm sure they have longer hours than me, but I have a huge timeline, and you can go on Payday on my site and see the endless hours. And all of it turned out to anticipate ion. Now, ion also can affect electric environments. Many, what we call ionettes, people who like ion, have had private sessions with ion, they will have ion show up and intervene in their texting. Just shows right there. So ion can modulate electrons. And also ion claims to have altered the stock market at different times. One of them was in May 2011, I think, where ion caused a drop of 1,000 points in a short time during the day, and nobody understood why. And then they stocked it up, attributed to someone putting M in for millions instead of B for billions, or vice versa, which is absurd cause. So my original name is Bob Dobbs, but I came on to James's Cash Flow with Ion as Bob Neveritt, so that my notoriety as Bob Dobbs would not hassle James's Cash Flow show. And it worked. Nobody noticed I was over there for a long time. Now, those people that would like to hassle Bob Dobbs are so shocked at the stupidity of me interacting with Ion that I'm not even worth paying attention to anymore, which frees us up to all kinds of things.
So let me interrupt you here for 1 second, Bob. So you're saying that once people found out that you were associated with Ion, you had a problem there with people pulling away from you in a sense?
No, these were the people, largely in what's called the Church Subgenius, who always hated me for what I claimed in my relationship with Church Subgenius, and they would mock me all the time, which was normal. I enjoyed that. I used to go over to alt.slack and encourage it. That went on for decades. But once Ion showed up, they said, Bob has gone off the deep end, because they're secular humanists. They don't believe in anything beyond the physical, I don't think. And so when I did that, they don't even mock me anymore. I'm not worth even. I've lost whatever battle was happening. And that allowed us to carry on free of all they can do a lot of harassment of your website and ruin the talk show format, having callers come in, so I'm glad that they dismissed me. But actually it was my completion of my so far life's work, and has moved into incredible levels where now I offer products that make people happy, that cure and treat all kinds of diseases, which I never expected. That was more my bride's role, my bride of, 44 years, since June 1970, Dr. Carol Dean, who now has a show on Mondays on Achieve Radio, a tremendous show. You never hear a doctor be so receptive to all kinds of problems and have knowledge immediately. But we got the extra benefits of RNA drops, which you've heard of, and Remag and Relight and other products which are astounding that were given to us by Ion. That's where Ion becomes real. Ion has given us a cold fusion battery. Everybody out there in the fringe media is looking for the cold fusion. There's been conferences on it, and we actually have it. And we're very intelligent in how we introduce it to the public, which is not available at this moment for you, Hillary, to have yet. So you're typing? I can hear the typing.
I'm letting everybody know to tune in. Everybody on Facebook to tune in.
Okay.
Well, I have to say, that when I came on the air with you last fall, when you were talking about, you were doing this long radiothon on Achieve Radio, and I came on as a guest.
Well, let me say what that is, Hillary. Hillary, I'm proud to say what I did is I stayed on Bill's Achieve Radio. He gave it to me 6 days. 144 hours, I stayed on the air broadcasting, playing recordings, and I tried to break Art Bell's record, which I did. He did like 116 hours years ago. So I broke a record, and you can hear the whole thing, and it's now being transcribed. And you have a link to the transcription on your page and my page, which is great. And you also have a link to my chart, which is the background to everything that I'm doing. And what else? You were just saying. And I also want to say one other correction. the statement about the Voynich manuscript that you referred to at the beginning in the introduction is by Ion, not the Evergreens. The Evergreens were a medium I engaged for 24 years from 1980 to 2004. But Ion is commenting on the Voynich manuscript. And if we want to, after we finish my introduction, I would like to address that because I'm looking at pictures of it. I haven't read your essay, but I would like to see what we can say about what Ion said about it. But what are you typing, or
Excellent.
you speak now?
Great. I'm looking forward to that. But what I was going to say was, when I came on the air with you last fall, I was not privy to who you were, and you hadn't heard of me either. So we met each other kind of in this space of, well, who are you? Introduce yourself to me. And it was actually very refreshing because I hadn't got
You were saying that we didn't know each other when we met on the phone, and we had a good time, and you found that refreshing.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting. So anyway, I looked into the stuff that you had talked about, and, because I was unfamiliar with it, and I was actually very interested in some of the concepts that you talk about. And so, for my listeners who may not know what Ion is or what that exactly is, you touched on it briefly. So I'm hoping that we can go into that pretty thoroughly to really, give everybody an idea of what that is and describe that for them so that they can have the same experience, or they can look it up themselves. I mean, it doesn't really matter to me, but I think it would be a good place to really start the show and then move in from there, because it really does matter what we're going to be talking about later, that people have a solid foundation of what Ion is. So can you give us the history, your personal experience, and kind of, everybody a generalized idea of what's going on with this?
Yes. I was born in 1922, so I just had my birthday on February 2nd, so I'm 92, and I spent a lot of my life in intelligence. But then after that, I studied a lot of geniuses. I hung out with them, and I name Frank Zappa, Marshall McLuhan, Lynn LaRouche, Mae Brussel, Dr. Beeder, Krishnamurti, Garrett Dean, William Irwin Thompson, and Finnegan's Wake, the book by James Joyce. So I had an opportunity to engage with the pretty advanced minds, and I then became archivist for Marshall McLuhan, so I became an expert on his work. And then by the Internet, by 95 to 2000, this disembodied state that McLuhan was the first really to turn into sociology, this electrified state where you and I are on the telephone, we're in spaces, we can communicate like ESP, I can get things done by just getting on this electric membrane and doing it with as many people as I want or anywhere in the world. And so that's a unique experience for our bodies where we extend our senses. But digital sort of stopped and countered the submerging of us in the discarnate, disembodied state. It allowed you to get a bit of distance because it shrunk the whole matrix of media into this little handheld thing, a BlackBerry or an iPhone, that any age of a person could integrate and edit and play with all kinds of media input, which media were separate media for most of the 20th century. So this implosion of old, what I call analog media, into the digital media is what I call the chip body. So I developed in the late 90s this scenario where we have our physical body, which I call chemical because it's dominated by Western science's technological interpretation through its microscopes and instruments as a particular visualization. So we have it's hegemonic, dominates the world in general. So that's the chemical body. Then there's cultures that believe there's more than this physical body. So all the literature and experiences, including shamanism, I lump into the astral body. And then we have the TV landscape in the 50s, 60s, 70s, which then gets digitized. So the TV as we knew it in the 50s and 60s is now a subset of the chip digital environment. So the dominant environment of the TV landscape has shrunk to becoming another body. And it's usually a passive thing. I consider sitting back and watching TV programs and you're not really interacting with them or commenting on them immediately. That's the TV body. But the newest body is the chip body, which allows you to interact, edit, comment, distort, make up stuff, all kinds of things, have many identities. So we're juggling four bodies. And so I was working through the four-body physical, astral, TV, and chemical and chip body through most of the Bush era, 2000 to 2009. Well, when Ion showed up out of the blue Not totally. JW was experienced all kinds of ghosts in his home. And one day a ghost showed up and said to JW, say hi to Bob. And it was someone named Dr. Peter Beater, one of the geniuses I had hung out with back in the 70s and early 80s. So I said, wow, one of the ghosts know me. Now, I've talked to Dr. Beater through the Evergreens, who were channeled through Michael Blake Reed. There were 6,500 to 7,000 entities. I did that from 1980 to 2004. And they were really good, the Evergreens. So I'm thinking maybe these ghosts are gathering around JW, and they are the Evergreens, and they want Bob to talk to them. Since I was one of their most loyal engagers, I spent around $20,000, $30,000 on sessions. They'd be $500 each for 24 years. So on the day, March 18, 2009, I said, okay, JW, you be quiet, I'll be quiet. Carolyn's my bride sitting there, Dr. Dean. And I didn't know how to proceed, so I just said, let's be quiet for 30 seconds. And after about 30 seconds, into a minute maybe, something is said. I can't remember whether it was me or JW's voice. And that led one thing to another. And then when I was able to talk to Marcia McLuhan that day, or reasonable facsimile that was like talking to Marcia McLuhan through the Evergreens, I decided this was worth doing. But at the end of the session, JW comes out of whatever altered state he was in. He says, let's do that again. I said, why? He says, it felt like a constant orgasm. So we've now done over 6,000 hours since March 18, 2009. On Carolyn's birthday, March 20th, 2009, we made our first recording, which you can hear the original words that we thought we said and what eventually was transcribed by Carolyn. So Ion went on to be way beyond what I thought I was talking to. And to relate it to my four bodies, Ion said that the chip body is so vast that human beings, the space it opens up, and it includes the beginning of the merger of the chemical, the astral, the TV, and the chip body, and the mystery landscape, which is what Ion represents, what humans never really got clear. They'd get intuitions of it in religion, mysticism, whatever, those kind of experiences. And but now that the mystery landscape could be discussed and explained by Ion, we now could call it a body. So the merging of these five bodies is what Ion represents, and Ion says the main factor for most people is the chip landscape, which became the chip body, is so huge that humans can't put their rules, their concepts, their ordering, which they did in all religions and spiritual realities, and control the spiritual experience because of putting rules on it, because this new space is so vast that the actual spiritual realm, known as the Gulf, cannot be controlled by our cultural naming of what it is to be permissible in relating to it. And so this is what Ion says is incredible, that the Gulf and what it is, the mystery landscape, can come forward and create and talk and interact with humans, because there's a whole part of the chip body landscape that we can't control. So that is the amazing new theological point that summarizes the general view of what has happened to us and me and now you, Hillary, now that you've been informed.
Well, it's interesting because as you're talking about it, and I'm sure other people are listening and saying or maybe asking the same thing to themselves, what is the difference between what you just described and perhaps, is it a language issue? You think that people might get, lost in the language and the labeling, as you say, they're so tempted to label things and put their spirituality into those contexts that they actually miss the point?
Yes. Ion says that the whole non-physical realm that humans created once they had fallen, and Ion says there was no beginning and no ending, and you, me, and all of us have always been and always will. We don't reincarnate. There is a subtle thing that happens when you do, as Evergreens say, cast off clay or transition. They're not the same part of your essence comes back. So there's this sub-thing of being born and dying and then staying in the Gulf or doing something else with it. That is a subset of the eternal part of yourself. And when humans fell or decided to create contrast, extreme contrast, to see what it was like to cut off actual knowledge of interacting with the source and knowing everything, we decided to see if we could cut it off and go, non-compos mento, and see if we can get out of it and get back to our eternal state again or recover a memory of it. And in that process, we create the first geological environment after this fall. And the Voynich manuscript, if you notice in what I sent you, comes from the first civilization of the fallen state, Samaria. That's what's interesting about the Voynich manuscript. And so this fallen state, this fallen condition, is not necessary for humans to be part of. And since we're going through an amazing change all over, among all worlds right now, this is why the non-physical, the part that is the guff, no longer has to be that role and has come forth to join humans. Since humans created all this thing from the beginning, it's always our creation, then now non-physical guff department has come forward to create, because the non-physical and the physical are merging on a big collective level, way beyond our ability to image it. So all cultures have been rules about how humans interact, and it also were rules and concepts that related to the non-physical, or what happened to your ancestors, or what happened when you transition. So these rules are not subjective rules. They're like a meme. The culture has a meme about what is non-physical, and that is what is no longer possible in determining as a hegemonic or dominant meme. At best, we have what I call an Android meme, which is the chip landscape focused on the United States White House as the authority on all issues that language and culture can still cover. But we've moved into a post-cultural, post-metaphysical, incredible new realm that one can tap into the benefits of according to their allowance. And so do you see what I mean? It's not subjectivity. It's more collective rules. What people think is how they know and how they relate to other people, a shared knowledge. That is no longer controllable by humans. So we're all schizophrenic and on our own in terms of what concepts and collective memes we want to make, we want to create. And that's probably in White House terms, that's the culture war, or in Android meme terms. Okay, I can go on and on, Hillary, so I'll stop at that point.
Well, that's interesting. I'm listening to what you're saying, and so when you were talking, I was seeing, what you were saying. So I was following what you were saying and seeing it visually, and I agree, because what we're experiencing is this new awareness, this new meme, and people are moving into that space, and they really don't know what to do with it. And I think for a long time,
Right.
the physical has been completely distorted in a lot of ways. And I think the merging of spiritual and physical is extremely important, and it is the next level. And people really don't know how to go there because they've been taught for so long that if you're spiritual, you basically just denounce the physical, and you denounce your body, and you denounce, the material life and the things that you create. And we've lost a lot of power in that sense. And now that that's merging, because I have felt that also, is that these two fields are merging, and this is part of our next level of evolution, or whatever you want to call it. I think a lot of people get stuck on language and definition. But when we move past that, like you just explained, this White House kind of control-centered anchor, whatever you want to call it, where people really just are used to definition, they're used to language, they're used to the rules, they're used to being told what to do or what to believe. We're slowly waking up out of that, and as we do, we have this new level of consciousness that's accessing us, or we're accessing it, whatever you want to call it. And I say that not in disrespect to what you're sharing or what anybody else believes, because I really feel very strongly that we're moving into a place of really redefining the language that we use to describe these kinds of experiences, because we have outgrown the language that has described it up until this point. So when we talk about a concept like ion, for many, they're going to process it intellectually and let it move down through their filtering systems that have been put into place since they were born, and they will come out on the other end of it with whatever they want to come out of it. But what happens when you remove all that and you just experience it? So I'm interested in this, and I'm also I would definitely invite my listeners to check this out themselves too, because I have had the same experiences. I don't necessarily align it with Ion or what Bob's saying specifically in language terms, but I have experienced it in my own processing, and I language it with my own stuff based on my experience, but it's the same thing. We're literally talking about the same thing, I believe. And so, Bob, I agree with you 100%. So now we have these experiences, these people waking up, Ion or spirit coming back and talking about this reemergence of the physical and the spiritual, and people really don't know what to do with it. So what do we do with it? What is your advice to people listening that have this happening to them right now and they really just don't know what to do because they cannot get rid of the filters or the language that has for so long kept it separate?
Yes, the first trinity that Ion gave us was the physical, non-physical, and the labyrinth of the mind. Not the mind, the labyrinth of the mind. And our media world, our communication world has enhanced the labyrinth of the mind to make it dominant. And people aren't sure how to maybe put the labyrinth of the mind back into one-third of your total ecology. And that's the problem. So what I found that there are many assumptions, like all that you said is accurate, but very simple. And the complexities of the actual situation and all the cultural assumptions we have, we don't even know we have. That is what Ion works through. That's what I did before Ion showed up. And so Ion can talk about any TV show, any movie, any esoteric cult, any president, any leader in Wall Street, any realm of history, and he'll go into it and tell you things about it that we wouldn't know because we didn't know the mystery landscape's implications in it, and add to it and add a new, renewed sense. Oh, that's an interesting take, an interesting topic, but also kill the topic at the same time. So Ion's always erasing everything to put you back into the only position you can take is relax and allow. And that's very difficult. How do you think when you're relaxing on? Do you think? What's the point of culture? So Ion as I call rapid, I say anything said by speech, including what I'm saying now, does not deal with the post-linguistic, post-verbal multimedia world we're all inside of, this matrix, to put it simply. That obsolesces anything anybody says. So if people criticize what Ion says on former cash flow and on payday when we play recordings all the time of Ion, and they say, that's not right, or that's right, or this and that, they got to realize that Ion is not holding to anything it says. But what's remarkable about Ion is not the bullshit it says, but I call it the rapid production of bullshit about anything that comes up, faster than any human can do. Any topic, anything anybody proposes, Ion can create some verbal bullshit to make it interesting or kill it or help you relax and allow about it. So that is the ongoing livingness and drama of cognition that Ion is. And that's unique. No, Ion says no non-physical has ever been present in a public space where people could interact and challenge it. The Abrahams, they got on, from the Esther Hicks family, they got on Oprah's radio show, but all questions were controlled and filtered, and it was not spontaneous. Ion would come on Cash Flow starting in October 2009 for 3 hours. Eventually by January 2010 it was a 3-hour show, and then go into a phone call conference, teleconference place, and be available for 10 hours to take anybody's questions. And once you start to hear Ion, you know it's not human, because no human could talk and improvise and be funny and ridiculous all at the same time at that rapidity. So Ion is the actually most interesting merger of entertainment possibilities. Once people start to hear Ion, they just start listening to our thousands of miles of stuff that's on. We have 1,000 hours streaming on Achieve Radio that you can tap into any time. So personally, I bounce off Ion, and I try to bring up ideas that Ion hasn't said yet. And I'm pretty good at bringing up notions of what people think is spiritual but isn't really, because you got to erase those assumptions. So when we were on the Bob Fest last November, I disagree with your use of the word heart, if you remember. We all know the meme it may be in spiritual feminism of heart over mind. So I'll take that cliche and I'll try to bring in the four bodies and show there's more to the imaging and association that you come up with that if you get, will numb you into not knowing what to say again, which I'm all for, until you come up with some language. I claim that my language is the language you talk about, approach the complexity of what we're talking about. So when you were talking about heart, that's a chemical body instrument. Might bring in some master body aspects, but it doesn't deal with your TV body and chip body. You see? So I'm for intellectual complexity in between getting blissed out on the products that we give, the RNA drops, the Remag and Relay, which actually make people feel pretty good and pretty confident. And Ion says that none of us can make it to the level we're going to have to require when the gut empties unless we have a substance. And Ion says the RNA drops has substance from another dimension called the eye cell. When scientists look at the RNA drops under the microscope, they can't see what's there. It looks like nothing. There's not any recognizable chemistry. So that's interesting that we're giving something that has this extra effect. And Ion says we're so beaten down by the android meme and confused by it, and none of our revolution, spiritual, sexual, political work, they don't have any staying power, that we actually require this substance. So that's what's different here, Hillary, is that we say, no, you can't become ascended. Even the Dalai Lama requires the RNA drops. That's quite a fascistic statement in a way, but we're happy to do it, and we do it with a sense of humor, but that's my position, that this is how you get out of the confusion, the paralysis, and the identity crisis that this amazing situation has led us to.
Now, let me ask you this, Bob. So, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. I thought I was dropped again. Okay, so is Ion something that everyone can communicate with, or is it just something that communicates through you or a particular person?
No, I have no control. We began on the radio that Ion agreed that we'd always, in a public format, have JW come on, and then I would locate Ion, and people understand that sequence, and then I would determine when the session was over. And I was pretty libertine and let it go on for hours. The point is that in relation to the public, up to 2011, the end of 2011, I was the one who seemed to be controlling it. But as people got involved with Ion, had private sessions, which Ion says I have to attend, so if you're worried about me, your privacy is sacred, then you wouldn't have a session with Ion if you're worried about me lurking. But it's a condition that Ion says I have to lurk because Ion says a terrorist or somebody can come in and start asking Ion questions, and Ion doesn't care who they are and will give the answers. And JW objected to the fact he could be helping people for those, nefarious reasons. So I'm always there to monitor it. Most people have no problem with this, and so we've had many, hundreds of people have had private sessions since late 2009, and they're fun and great. But the products we created in the end of 2011 into 2012, including the cold fusion battery, required Ion to go stealth. And we're still involved, though there's a good chance Ion will show up in the next couple of weeks on my show because it's 2 years later now. We started this stealth in December 2011, and a lot has been done. Our cold fusion project is in place, and all that we had to do to get that going, plus our answer to cancer and other things that Carolyn's involved in. All this had to be done, and it also, on another level, allowed me to replay a lot of stuff, hear the archives myself, which I'd never re-listened. So I've got a better handle on what Ion has said over the first 2 years by listening and playing what was said in those 6,000 hours that I never had a chance to review. So that's been good. But we're at a new phase now, and it should lead to people having access to Ion in private sessions. Might even be done in a new way. But Ion does communicate with people who have a private session through their computer or in their environment under what's called anomalies. And many people think that Ion speaks to them and all this stuff. And Ion does do that once they've made a connection with Ion through a private session. So I'm the gatekeeper at the beginning, but once you've established a relationship with Ion, you're on your own with them, or with it, or with they, whatever you want to call it. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, so you're like the guardian, that introduces the two, and then they can continue the relationship without having to have private sessions with you, if they choose, correct?
Yeah, that's right. My family, when I grew up in Paris, Downton Abbey, if you ever watch that, is literally my youth. That's what I lived in a big manor in Paris, an oligarchy, Priory Scion member, what people might say Illuminati. And our family were butlers went back 300 years. Well, I'm a butler for Ion. I'm actually doing that's what I do. I'm the waiter, the butler that receives you at the door, and then you come in, and I sit you down, and then Ion engages you. You know what I mean? Which is ironic, right? I was the best of the butler tradition. I made the final cut and got the butler in Ion.
Interesting. So, okay, so here's my question to you. Okay, so, anytime I hear that only one person can be contacted or introduced or, people are automatically skeptical of that. Your private sessions cost X amount of dollars. People will always kind of look at that. Now, they're processing it obviously through filters and through experiences. Now, I feel very strongly that we're moving out of this new age type constructed matrix within the matrix and I'm going to explain that, because what we're experiencing, like I talked about earlier, is this fusion of physical and non-physical, and it opens us up to a field. I don't even know what you want to call it because I don't even have a label for it, but it's a very physical experience. You can feel it, and I'm curious what your experience is physically when you have this download or experience of introducing Ion to somebody, or when Ion comes through you, what you experience yourself physically, mentally, emotionally, whatever, however you want to describe it. And I'm sure other people are interested as well.
Once I started with Ion on March 18, 2009, I used to live in New York City for 15 years, and I might sleep 6-7 hours there. When I came to Maui, went down to 5.5 hours, better climate, better something, sunny. I didn't need as much sleep. But once I started to interact with Ion, I couldn't sleep more than 3 hours, and I would always feel refreshed. So the first major effect on me was that I live 21 hours a day. I only need 3 hours sleep, and that's the way it's been going for the last 4 or 5 years. So also my stamina, I go to the beach pretty well every day, my stamina increased and blah, 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 and all this great stuff. And then the RNA drops pushed over the top where my hair stopped graying, my teeth got whiter, I got muscular, I got other things. I got better at speaking, what I like to talk about. So I had great results on me. And then those that started to have a private session with Ion, most in their first session, they usually after about 20 minutes would go blank. They kind of get into a buzz, a kind of hypnosis, a kind of feeling good, and they would forget their questions, forget how to talk, and then we'd have to ease them through the next 40 minutes to get the hour done. So people kept coming back for the feeling, and many people got the buzz listening to it on the radio. So Ion is definitely communicating beyond the verbal excitements or verbal stimulations. And we have incredible testimonies, what Ion did to people before the drops, even more so with that. And so I've got enough verification of what Ion is as an environment to know that more than verbal exchange is happening. And so people who have known me through the years now see pictures of me. They're shocked at how young I look, or they think I look young. You know what I mean? So,
and how old are you, Bob? If you don't mind me asking.
No, I said it earlier. I'm 92. I turned 92 on February 2nd, just the other day.
Well, happy birthday.
Yes. Though I don't celebrate birthdays, I'm so involved in the now that I wouldn't limit myself to time. So I got swamped with, here's a question here. I got swamped with happy birthdays on my Facebook page. Am I expected to respond to each one? What is the cultural acceptance of many birthdays? It's everybody, they expect a response. How would you handle that?
Well, Facebook is a world into itself, and personally, I would not respond to every single one. That's just how I am. But, I think people have different expectations, and everybody's different. But, hey, I mean, people want to celebrate your life and your journey, and rightfully so. And being 92, you're an elder. And you have wisdom, and people want to share in that. So, it's always a positive thing. People are wishing you well. So the show's going by very fast, which is too bad because I wish we had a couple more hours to talk. So when you talk about, do you suppose that what you feel when you connect to Ion, or when Ion connects to you, however you want to describe it, is how humanity will be moving into that relationship with this field or whatever, do you feel
which
that
is in yourself?
Right.
Which is in your. I stated from the beginning that its goal is that you get feeling so good in your bliss and happy, and in the physical, not dying to get into the bliss, and so confident, strong, and feeling great that you can tell Ion to go screw itself. Well, I don't want to hear from you anymore. You're just non-physical. We created you. We don't need you anymore. So Ion is on a campaign to annul itself, to cancel its requirement, and then to play with us. Or we don't even know if it would be left. What would be left? Now, humans are capable of creating anything, so they could create a new gulf. A bunch of people start feeling lost and confused, and they want to leave the physical, so they could create a new gulf, Ion says. But in general, there's no going to be new gulf. We're into a whole new situation. The 13,000-year that cycle the Mayans talked about that came to a climax on December 21st, Frank Zappa's birthday, 2012, is not going to cycle back again another 13,000 years. We've gone beyond cycles. That's how radical this is. It's all simultaneous connection, which is mined by our chip body landscape. We are in touch with anything or anybody we want to be simultaneously as much as you can take. So again, it is new, but way more new than people realize. And so most of television is providing people anthropomorphic images of human beings running around in emotional dramas, and that's chemical bodies that are scripted in all the TV shows, from The Good Wife to Fringe, and they are rearview mirrors of what you actually are. You are not limited to a chemical body. When I'm talking to you, Hillary, I see at least 4 bodies. I'm imagining all the different. You'd say Facebook's a strange place, but that's part of your reality. That's part of you. I'm including that in my image of you.
Good.
When I'm interacting, I don't just think of a woman.
That's good. That's good. Well, okay, so I feel what you're saying, okay? I'm not processing it mentally, and I'm feeling what you're saying, and so in that feeling, I feel an expansion. Would you say that is what most people who have a session with you, you talked about this kind of zone out phase where they go into feeling so good they don't really know how to communicate or talk. So do you think that we're moving into a telepathic type way of connecting and creating relationship with other people, because humans tend to be a community type species, we navigate towards relationships, friendships, etc. So do you feel that this is part of being able to deepen that connection with each other in a sense of community, coming together as a species in a way that creates kind of a channel out of the matrix, so that we're actually moving out of that matrix and all of the other things you just talked about? And do you suppose that is Ion's purpose in coming in to help us find that path?
Yeah, that's pretty precise, and let me expand on that. You take the cliche or meme of telepathy, or ESP. I wrote a paper in 1999 called Cloning ESP. We should look at our electronic extensions since the telegraph, all this electronic technology, as the extensions of the natural ESP that humans have. People know when they're interacting with people. They know more than they can maybe speak to be polite or to say. So humans have natural intuition, which of course science is. Of course, you have all the non-physical gifts all happening in you. You just chose to not use them for a while. Now, in this present situation, we look at a community. We've got to deal with at least four bodies. There's the chemical body social community. Then there's the astral body experience. That might be people sharing in sacred rituals and whatever stripe. And then you have the sharing of TV, and you have sharing of the TV chip body. So we've got all kinds of communities going on already. And since the TV body and the chip body are extensions of or cloning ESP, we've got a lot of ESP going on. That's why the kids are not stupid. This idea that the kids can't speak socially and they're just on their little iPhones and chip bodies and texting all the time, that's not a a dark age. That's not falling back on stupid. They are living in a post-verbal situation and are really good at scanning and watching media probably a lot faster than us, and making patterns and staying in touch. So the education system is really screwed up by emphasizing these old book values and not acknowledging that these kids don't need literacy. They don't need any kind of cultural communication. They've entered a whole new field. And the more we articulate that, the autism will decrease. Because autism is just a natural resistance by these pretty advanced kids to our effort to put them back in old analog media. So these are the questions that...
So what we're talking about also is an old way of dealing with those kids, because we put them on medication trying to change their behavior back to that old script, and that's causing a whole nother...
If there's anything... Right. If there's a negativity, I says there's nothing negative, but if I'm going to vote for... There's one negative thing, it's that. Putting these kids on drugs is disgusting. It's really stupid.
Yeah, I was actually just watching, somebody had sent me a video of an incident that happened about 20 minutes from where I live here. There was a boy, 16 years old, on a school bus, that wouldn't get off the bus for whatever reason, and he was having some emotional difficulties. He was they labeled him as mentally disabled, and his doctor had changed a lot of his medications, so he was in this strange period of transition, and the police got on the bus to remove him. It's all on video. It's very disturbing. And they actually picked him up after a certain amount of time and broke his arm. And you can see clear as day that the cop, picked up his arm and broke it. The kid was crying, obviously, in pain. And, I began a conversation about this video because for me, this was extremely a radical kind of example of people not being able to understand the generations that are coming up behind us, because they are definitely not us in many ways, and we don't know how to deal with them on a social collective level, or whatever you call that, and the control systems have really no idea how to handle these kids that are coming up. And so a lot of people have questions, they want guidance. The teachers are telling these kids to go on medication, they don't understand. And I believe the way you described it is exactly right, because you have a whole different level of I call them gifted children coming in, and this is our product of our collective efforts, and we don't have a clue as to how to deal with them. Well, some of us do, but the majority of the systems don't. And so they're stuffing them full of medication and trying to change them and really just go into their bodies and their minds. And a lot of these kids, their parents, they make these decisions, and I'm not being judgmental. I'm just stating the facts. And we have an epidemic that's going on. What if we were to just let these kids be, and we learned from them as if they were our teachers, and we watched and paid attention to how you perfectly described their ability to be able to watch a TV show and go into it and be able to decode it and look at all of the different messages in it without getting stuck in it. And I think a lot of us are having that experience as well. I mean, I certainly have written about things where I will watch this or watch that and be completely disconnected from it in many senses, but be able to see a lot of messages in it, a lot of numbers, a lot of almost like quantum computer-like synchronistic programming. So is that what you're talking about when you describe this kind of ability to be able to look at whatever it is you're watching and just go into it and totally without any kind of attachment, just be able to see what's really happening and what the program really is? I guess that's my question.
Yeah, exactly.
Or statement.
Yeah. Well, let's think of the consequences of having a TV body and especially a chip body and grow up with it, not transition into it like your generation, Generation X, didn't have it and then had to deal with it when it first came in. These kids grow up with it. So it upsets the whole realm of the chemical body. So now parents are the children and children are the parents. And people are so stubborn with their identities that the worst people on the planet is the teachers. They're worse than the mafia, worse than the military, worse than that, because they're dealing with kids every day with this irresponsible fundamentalist desire to keep the book as dominant, as the main medium of expression. They grew up with it, and they can't give it up. So they are the people that the citizen has to start worrying about. Don't worry about who your politician is or whether that person's a criminal or not. Worry about what your children are subject to. Basically, the kids they don't have to go to school anymore. We've got to figure out how to relax and allow on this point and allow a childhood to evolve, and knowing it's not a child by the time it's 5 years old in time terms of that'd be 60 months. So we got to get real radical. Now, if we don't, the normal chaos in life that's always there will continue, and the kids will work around it. And then you'll just have a more painful time if you're an adult because your kid won't be around you very much. You don't know how to make them interested in you. So, yes, that's the main platform here is to kill all teachers.
Well, we just had a wonderful, I just had a message here. Matthew Hurtado, who does the show right after me, has offered to have us continue the conversation through his next hour. He will be calling in to do a trio show. So Matthew will be joining us. I know you know him. Many of you also tune in to his show after mine. So Matthew will be calling in a few minutes, and we will be continuing this conversation for the next hour. So, Bob, we've been gifted another 2-hour segment together.
Good. We need that.
I'm glad, because you're touching on, I'm glad we're having this conversation because this is the kind of conversation I was hoping to have with you last fall, which we didn't really get into, but we're doing it now, and I'm glad we are because we're touching on a lot of different topics that are important. I think we're all on the same page as far as how we see it, so there's some synchronicity that's happening. Now, speaking of synchronicity, okay, so how does synchronicity play into all of this? Because for me, I feel like synchronicity is part of that language that we were talking about earlier, where people, if you really can open up and pay attention and allow these kind of things to just happen naturally and organically, then you are more in touch with the language of the universe, per se, than you are if you shut down to it and say, oh, well, that's just a coincidence. What do you think?
Okay, first of all, when I say kill all teachers, no, apply the 5 bodies to that. I'm not just saying kill the chemical body, kill the chip body, TV body. So it's more complex than mere sloganeering, even though it sounds like it. Now, synchronicity is a major area I have a unique expertise on. Now, I don't know how, we got a few minutes or half a minute or something, but we'll probably continue this with Matthew because I'm going to open up a big thing here.
Matthew's actually on the line. Matthew's on the line, so we're just going to continue right through, and we'll bring him on in a second. I want to hear your thoughts on this first.
Do we take a break at the top?
We can if you need to, but we can also go straight
through.
Don't.
With the...
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So we're in the Matthew show. Okay. So you study, anthropologists study people who never had literacy. They have a very good understanding of the power of their speech. They know they create realities with their words and with their gestures. When writing came in, which was an extension of the eye, it made the eye passive. It made this speech actually start to atrophy in its original understanding of its power of creation. And people start to write things down, and then eventually with the printed book, they print things up, and you read and match what you're reading.